Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Students, if you can sit, you can sit, but if you can't, too bad. Okay. Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the Emerging Media Lab showcase of all of our summer projects. Our teams have worked on these throughout the summer term, and we're really grateful that you will all join us at this very busy time of year. My name is Marian Kempthorne, and I'm the lab supervisor for the Emerging Media Lab at UBC. It's my honor today to be your host and to guide the showcase of the collaborative work while also introducing all our special guests. I thank you, and I acknowledge today that we gather here on UBC Vancouver campus, which is situated on the traditional ancestral unceded territory of the Musqueam peoples and among the lands of the Coast Salish peoples. For your information today, today's session is being recorded, but it's not being broadcast. If you have any questions, you can ask me. And after the presentations in this room, we'll be relocating over to the Dodson room, and we invite all of you to hold your questions and your curiosities and your feedback and come and see the demos over there. While we also have a reception to celebrate not just their work, but a recent award for EML from the Canadian Higher Education Group, CUCCIO. So please do feel encouraged to join us over there afterwards. But we have a lot of content to get through with the students and a couple of our guests. So I'd like to just welcome to the podium to open us today, Dr. Christina Hendricks. Thank you so much for coming. Vice Provost and Associate Vice President, Teaching and Learning, Pro Tem.
Thank you very much. So yes, that's me. I'm Christina Hendricks with a very long title. So I am filling in the provost office this year, but before that was academic director of the Center for Teaching, Learning and Technology for 5 years as well. So thank you for the introduction and welcome to the Emerging Media Lab's annual Summer Showcase, one of the flagship events of the Emerging Media Lab. And I'm really happy to have been invited to come to this event and speak to you briefly. And also in particular, super excited to hear about the work that's been going on. So thank you. Just a little bit of history, the Emerging Media Lab, or EML, as we sometimes just shorten it to, started in 2017. And it has a direct connection to UBC's strategic plans around transformative learning. So its mission is to bring together faculty, students, of course, and staff across all kinds of disciplines to promote emerging media, emerging technologies, and innovation in teaching and learning. So this year, the showcase includes a presentation from Dr. Patrick Pennefather and John Festinger on generative AI, which I know is something that is of great interest to lots of folks and something that we're talking about a lot in the provost office as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. And also, we have student teams sharing their group projects after that, and I'm particularly interested in hearing from the students to hear about their projects. So since its inception, and you just heard this, the EML has made a name for itself. It's gotten recognition and accolades from industry, higher education and publications, CUCCIO being one of them, and also EDUCAUSE's Horizon Report. And for many students, the EML is a launchpad for their careers. So you learn such incredible and important skills in technology, innovation, media, that you can then go on to use in future careers. And many of the students in the EML have gone on to work in the tech industry and in other industry partners. It also provides an opportunity for the students to engage in work that's around developing and evolving issues around media and technology. And in addition, in close to my own heart, the Emerging Media Lab also works with the Center for Teaching, Learning and Technology on teaching and learning projects. The Center for Teaching, Learning and Technology supports faculty and graduate students on teaching and learning in many areas, including around technology and innovation. So it's great to have those connections as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoy the creativity that you're going to hear about, the collaboration you'll hear about, and of course the innovation that you'll hear about. So thanks so much.
Thank you. So I will ask members of our faculty and residence program, Dr. Patrick Pennefather and John Festinger, to come up. They're going to be holding a little bit of a fireside conversation. Thank you so much, Dr. Hendricks. And you guys are here and you are literally having a fireside conversation, right?
Emphasis on the fire.
To use or not to use, dilemmas and solutions integrating generative AI in post-secondary learning.
We really tried in that.
Do you have your mic? Do you have your mic?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marianne, and thank you, Dr. Hendricks, as well, for the lovely, warm welcome. Super happy to be here with John. John and I have constant conversations. We'll try to keep it to 15 minutes. We may need you to shut us up, because once we go on technology and its integration and role in education, it's difficult for us to stop. That said, we do have a time box of 15, so this will be pretty short, John. And what I also want to do just before starting this up is to also introduce our unique feature of today, which will be Daniel Lindenberger acting as the disruptive DJ of GPT, to give another voice and another dimension to our conversation. Don't expect everything on the screen to be about what we're talking about either. We thought we would add this third voice into the conversation today that John and I are going to have. As Dr. Hendricks mentioned, there's lots of discussion around generative AI right now happening. And there's challenges, there's wonderful affordances, there's constraints, there's ethical dilemmas, all of it, which is a fantastic pot of soup for us in an educational environment to reflect on, to be critical about, to engage with and engage in dialogue with. Because what's happening is the industry around us, outside industries around us, are going through the same dilemmas. They're wondering how they're going to integrate it. Creatives of all types are wondering how to integrate it. Juliana, where are you? Raise your hand. Juliana's wondering how to integrate it, and she's a fantastic artist. So all that to say, John.
7 minutes.
That was... Don't worry, you'll get used to that, maybe. So this is John. I'm Patrick. John, I'm going to allow you to have the mic, but not this mic, the mic that you already have wearing. And we're going to talk about how are we actually integrating Gen AI in our classroom environments, because I think that's a great way to start. And let's go with that. John.
Okay, so my view, yours may well be different. Everybody's panicking a little bit. There's a lot of headlines about how AI is going to end the world. AI isn't going to end the educational world. So I think we got to look at what is generative AI. I tell my students, use it, cite it. It's a citation. It's a source. It may not be a good source. So you've got to figure that out. If you want your mark to be good, you've got to check the source, see how good it is, correct it. But you do have to disclose it. Otherwise, it's plagiarism. And I add one other thing. If ChatGPT, if that's what you're using, is plagiarizing, you're responsible for that plagiarism. So you better be sure what's in the source. What's the result of that? They dig deeper. They learn more. Over to you. How are you using it?
Wow, that's great. So much to talk into that in terms of the ownership of generative AI, because I think that's where the future lies in our classrooms. We can give these tools to our students much like I am doing. And we also have to look at the implications of allowing students to access those tools. It's not just a free-for-all, like, go use that tool. It's more similar to what John is saying, is understand what it's going to cost to use that tool. And I think that's really important and often gets overlooked in terms of the conversations around generative AI. We need to understand that. We also need to understand, well, what is this tool? And so I frame it as a tool. And where I bring it into the dialogue with my students is, how are you going to use this to enhance or augment your own creative process? As a tool, as something that gives you a pretty bad version 1, no matter what that version 1 is, no matter how much, Juliana, Midjourney tries to stylize your prompt when you generate in Midjourney. I can tell Midjourney generative content now because I've been so exposed to it. And it's interesting, and it's good to have that conversation about AI. So very first classes I've had this week, last week and this week, an MDIA 100 class. I ask students as a common activity to draw what success looks like in the class. My colleague Dennis Chenard, who we used to work at the MDM program, is in the room, and he's very familiar with this activity. You just draw, but here's the constraint. You have to use paper and those things that, I think are they pens?
Yeah.
Pencils?
Pencils, pens,
Colored,
paper.
So you have to use that.
Very exciting.
So you draw that. Okay, where's the Gen AI come in? Well, this is fantastic. Scribble Diffusion is a fantastic little tool. And then I say to my students, and now I want you to try to recreate your fantastic drawing with a bad interface online, and then prompt it and see what's generated. And now, after that, talk about the differences. What are those differences? Did you like yours better? What did the Gen AI give you, or did it give you anything, or did it propose new ideas that have surprised you, that have made you think about what success looks like for you in this course? So that's one example.
Can I just add one thing? I have an absolutely fantastic colleague at the law faculty, and she had the inspiration or presence of mind or bad taste in the spring to send me an email and say, hey, will you talk to me about something? And so I went into her office, which is 2 offices down from mine, and she said, I'm teaching a legal research course next year. What do you think? Do you think I should incorporate generative AI? And I said, well, if you don't, everybody in practice, in the practice of law, is using generative AI right now. If you don't, we're not preparing them. She was totally inclined in that direction. But then what do you do? How do you design it as an exercise? Well, you ask your students, do the research, now compare it to ChatGPT or whatever, look for bias. You will find bias, absolutely. Look for inaccuracies, and then do the assignment based on that. And you learn what you can do and can't do with those tools. And that's part of what we have to do in an educational institution, is prepare people for the real world. It's not all we do, but it's part of what we do.
Great. Yeah. So, and speaking of that, in terms of bias, so what I wrote about in my book, shameless plug, is that interacting with generative AI, and generative AI generally, brings up biases and ethical dilemmas that have already been present with us. Generative AI didn't invent copyright issues with content, right, John?
Certainly didn't. The internet didn't invent copyright issues either.
Yeah. Generative AI didn't create bias. It didn't invent bias, but it does bring to the surface as well our own biases when we start to interact with it. So it is a mirror in a lot of ways as to that reflects, yes, as our great colleague Naomi Klein has mentioned, it reflects the programming team as much as it does the individuals who are prompting it. So who hallucinates, really? I remember that article that Naomi wrote, which was fantastic. And it essentially challenges us to consider also the people that program these large machine learning models and the problems that are inherent when you hear words like algorithm, when you hear things like pre-trained data. You should start to think, well, what are the challenges in that process, and who are the researchers, who are the instructors, who are taking those challenges head on? And that's where I'm also bringing that up in my classes for my students, so that they're exposed to go down these different paths if they so wish.
So I just want to add one pro tip, because I'm not reading about it anywhere, and I have found it in my own experience. There is one thing that generative AI does unbelievably well, for reasons that has to do with our psychology as humans. We think of AI and computers as out there, but they're constantly interacting and dialoguing with us, and that's actually the breakthrough here. And that is a generative AI, as bad as it may be at answering questions, at different levels of suitability, is absolutely fantastic at asking questions. And you can train an AI to ask questions, even to ask Socratic questions. We've done it. Richard Tape and I at CTLT. And we're going to try and make it available to everybody at UBC, hopefully within a month. So the thing about that is, we as humans and we as educators, what is it that you tell your students all the time? There's no stupid question. So any question that's asked, we make of us, we make sense of it. We decide it makes sense. It may not make sense. Professors ask bad questions, judges ask bad questions all the time, but it doesn't inhibit the dialectic. So think hard about how to use generative AI to do questions, not answers.
That's great. Love it. And it looks like some questions were generated while you were speaking.
Excellent.
Should we interact for a moment and see what happens as we come to, I have a good time sense, as we come to 11 minutes of our 15.
How do we ensure each student's knowledge growth? Okay, I can do that one. Do you want to do that?
Go for
one?
it. Yeah, no, nothing's coming to mind right away.
Okay, immediately something comes to mind which shows you what a sicko I am. Okay, here's the problem. I'm going to use dance. I'm going to use AI teaching you to dance. And for me, if I said piano, I actually want to learn piano, so it gets a little loaded. I'm a terrible dancer. I'm never going to learn to dance. So there's two ways we can program an AI to teach us to dance. One, look at the perfect dancer, Baryshnikov, and then get the student to become Baryshnikov. The other is to look, oh, Festinger's got short legs, he's got stubby hands, he's overweight, he's not that healthy. We got to work with this subject, and what's the AI design to eventually, after longer than the lifespan I'm capable of having, turn me into a perfect dancer. And there's a huge difference. So don't use the AI to turn your student into a computer. Use the AI to free the student to identify what are the student's characteristics that may allow them to learn more. Create more options, create more flexibility. I think AI can really help us do that.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you. Thank you for that.
And I got that out of that.
That was really good.
Amazing quote.
That was really good. And I think that the segue, and maybe we can find a little closure for now, for this little session, is I think that it's important to introduce generative AI in our different learning environments, if only to allow ourselves and our students to position themselves within how they interact with it. So that positioning can be anything from complete resistance, this is terrible, I'm never going to use it, this sucks, it doesn't help me, it's ethically imbalanced, there is no way, to, oh my God, I'm going to go and apply to OpenAI tomorrow. No, okay, so that it's extreme, right? But it can also be, students can also be exposed to the types of processes that people are engaged in doing, which is, working on pre-trained models in private situations where you are actually creating your own corpus of data. That's an example with.
We're going to talk about that. Yeah.
So I just wanted to make that offer in terms of my own closure. John, do you want last words?
No, I think your last words are perfect.
How about Daniel's last words? Last words, Daniel. Should we give it to the generative AI?
Yeah, give it to
This is dangerous, right? You never know what those last words will be. I hope they're full of wisdom. Maybe they're meaningful. Maybe they're hyperbolic. Maybe they're homogeneous.
Woven from a fine multitude of threads. But a porpoise of data, well, that's an intriguing twist. If we were to create a porpoise of data, maybe it would involve gathering aquatic information, like the behavior and communication patterns of these intelligent marine creatures.
That last line is brilliant.
So John and Patrick, in your generative AI endeavors, do you ever find yourselves swimming in unconventional data porpoises?
All the time.
Well, let's leave it at that.
Thank you.
My media for me. Thank you, Patrick and John. You will hear from them again, actually, because we talk about our student projects, but I mean, our projects are faculty-led, and both of those wonderful people do work with our student teams, and they'll be presenting again. Thank you to everyone for your attention. It is wonderful to be able to pass the podium on to all of our students, their principal and investigators, and their teams. The work of summer was quite varied and interesting, but I'm going to let them tell you all about it. And so for working with the project presentations, I think we're going to start with vestibular group. So can I call you guys up, please, Vida? Michelle and Jerry. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. We're the vestibular assessment team. My name is Vida, and I was the project lead and designer for this project.
I'm Jerry. I was one of the software developers.
And I'm Michelle, and I'm the other software developer.
Unfortunately, our principal investigator, Roland Fletcher, couldn't be here tonight, but he did record an introduction explaining his inspiration for this project.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Roland Fletcher, and I'm an assistant professor of teaching in the Department of Physical Therapy. I'm pleased to introduce our subject matter, which is the vestibular system. The vestibular system is a fascinating sensory organ that sits deep in the inner ear. It is made up of 3 semicircular canals and essentially 2 sacs. Inside these sacs are some crystals called otoliths. As we age, these crystals can become dislodged and fall into one or several of the semicircular canals. When this happens, it causes disabling, intense vertigo. Thankfully, there is a fairly easy fix for this, which involves several different maneuvers, one of them being the Epley maneuver. With the Epley maneuver, we position the patient's head in different positions to put these crystals back into the sacs. I often say to patients, it's a little bit like those mazes that we would play with as kids, where you'd have the ball and you'd be having to roll around the maze to try and get the ball into a certain position. Essentially, that's what we are doing, but we can't see into the head. This makes teaching students a bit more challenging. And I reached out to the EML to see if they could help with some sort of tool to help students learn what's happening with the crystals as they put patients' heads in certain positions. The hope is that students can have more access to this sort of learning tool and improve their efficacy in treating patients. With that, I have the pleasure of handing over to the wonderful team that have developed a remarkable learning tool for our students. Thank you.
So our PI initially proposed an AR application that would help students learn and study the Epley maneuver. However, one of the main requirements for this project was that the application needs to be easily accessible to students. Therefore, our initial idea was to create a handheld AR application where a 3D model of the vestibular system would be overlaid on top of the student's head, and the crystals within the system would move accordingly as the Epley maneuver is performed on the student. In order to support this idea, we explored various face and image tracking technologies like Unreal Engine's Live Link tools, AR Core, and Lens Studio that would allow us to track head movement and therefore accurately simulate crystal movement. However, none of these approaches were appropriate given the nature of the Epley maneuver. For example, face tracking becomes more unstable as the student's head turns further away from the camera until it reaches a point where the face is no longer recognizable to the system. And image tracking also becomes less reliable as the camera moves further away from the image, making it a challenge to ensure that the student and the vestibular system are visible on the device's screen.
So as we consider exploring different technological approaches, we realized that the major characteristics of AR that were most relevant for this project was providing a comfortable environment where you could interact with the virtual patient, as well as hand tracking and object recognition. Handheld AR did not sufficiently support these features we wanted to implement, so we transitioned development towards a HoloLens 2 project. However, transitioning into developing for the HoloLens made this project less accessible to students, and so we pivoted our approach for development to create a project for instructors to use to demonstrate the Epley maneuver for students. During development, we also then realized that the HoloLens 2 only natively support a limited number of gestures, and on top of that, there was the environment quality was also not up to par with what we wanted. On top of that, the HoloLens 2 was also discontinued by Microsoft, and the mixed reality toolkit we were using for development was also deprecated and restricted to only Unreal Engine 5.0, which is currently 5 versions behind the current Unreal Engine version that's publicly available. Working with virtual reality using the MetaQuest 2 became our goal because the MetaQuest 2 provided a more seamless experience in VR for demonstrating the Epley maneuver. And in addition, there is continuous support by Meta to push for better headsets and for a better virtual reality framework.
One of the key challenges that we face was providing an accurate simulation of the vestibular system in real time. We took a 3D model of the inner ear and modified it for optimal view of the crystals. The posterior canal in particular is highlighted in a light turquoise, as you can see in the bottom corner, and the crystals will be contained within there. To minimize distractions, crystals were not presented in the other ears. The simulation was done through the custom physics manipulator that we created over the semester. Another key feature of our project was the inclusion of Unreal Engine's metahumans, which are complex, ready-to-use 3D models of humans. The metahuman's built-in structure allows for a realistic rotation range of the joints, and this feature is particularly useful when the student wants to turn the head according to the Epley maneuver. In addition, custom animations were created to define the stages of the Epley maneuver, which the student can switch between for the full experience.
As for future development, we would like to integrate the live stream and broadcast feature into our main project so that it can be a complete teaching tool. And then we would also like to improve the body and head tracking for more precise animations of the metahuman as the Epley maneuver is conducted. We would also like to simulate the abnormal eye movements that happen as the metahuman changes body positions and the crystals move in the posterior canal. And we would also like to include an option for the Epley maneuver on the left side of the ear. And that's it for our project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, team. They did that this summer, just this summer. So I'm going to call up on our next presenters, which is our 3D metabolism team. And do you guys want to use the clicker? Okay.
Thank you so much, Marianne. Hello, everyone. We're the 3DM team. I'm Reva, the project lead and designer. We have Kenneth, who's part of the content team, Mohsen, who's one of the developers, Frederick, one of EML staff developers, and we also had Farida, who was also part of the content team. And of course, our PI, Dr. Lindsay Rogers, who's unfortunately not able to be here today. To give you a quick introduction, 3DM is one of EML's longest running MVP projects. It's an educational tool for biochemistry students to be able to visualize cellular metabolism in an interactive, immersive 3D environment. Our goal for this term was to help polish up the 3DM project for it to be launched in classrooms pretty soon. And here's a short video by our PI explaining more about the project.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lindsay Rogers. I am from the Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, and my project at Emerging Media Labs is 3D metabolism. So for 3D metabolism, our team is really interested in using emerging media to represent complex networks. And the complex network that we are working towards representing is cellular metabolism. So for some of you that aren't biochemists or biologists, metabolism is really defined as the really complex set of chemical reactions that occurs within sort of all organisms to enable all kind of biological processes to occur. So this term, our team has been really working towards expanding our network within Unity, and we've also been working to incorporate a linked open data structure to our network. So we've built a wiki instance, and we're working towards linking that wiki instance to our network to enable us to link to several sources of public data. So I'll stop there and let other members of our team talk about some of the details of the things we've been working on. Bye. Hi.
Okay, so for this summer term, our main project goals included making some UI changes and also adding new features such as the cofactor visualization and reaction animation. We made network model adjustments and also worked on changing the wiki base. When it comes to the UI changes, we first worked on the camera movement and made it more fluid and dynamic and easy for the user to navigate around the network. We also incorporated the general search function where the user can go to the top right corner of the search bar, type in any node or edge or pathway that they want to see, and click on the suggested options, and the camera will automatically move towards that particular object. We also decided on changing the labeling system of this project because in earlier versions, all the labels were all overcrowded with each other, and it was a problem when it came to like user testing. So we decided to follow more of a Google Maps approach where the default view of the network is where you can only see few of the pathway labels, but once you zoom in, you can see more of the node labels and the edge labels. We also edited the compound made changes to the compound visualizer, where now the user can zoom in and out and look around the compound while also changing the color of the molecules to be more accurate towards the scientific colors. We incorporated a settings tab where the user can filter out the view of seeing the edge labels, node labels, and pathway labels. They can also see the cofactors, change the text sizes, enable and disable camera lock, and make other features to like help improve visualization. A spotlight feature was also added where the user can hover over any node or edge and it automatically gets highlighted or along with its labels, so it's easier for the user to navigate instead of having to click on each node and edge and open up a sidecar to see what it's called. A big goal that we had this term was also incorporating animations. We wanted the user to be able to see the flow of the reaction and the cofactors and how they interact with at each edge. We implemented this by having the user type in 2 nodes in the search bar, and it generates a pathway, and when they click the play button, it animates the flow of the reaction, and you can also see the cofactors go in and out of the edges. Speaking of cofactors, to give you guys more information about them, we have Kenneth.
Thank you, thank you, Reva. So we have cofactors. So in metabolism, cofactors are substances that some enzymes need in order to function. You may be thinking, how is that relevant? Hopefully this analogy works. So let's say I'm a protein and I make steak. The general idea is I make steak, but if you want to know how I do it in detail, you need to know the utensils and the seasoning I use, which the utensils and seasonings you can think of as cofactors. So since they're crucial for learning and research purposes, we wanted to implement the cofactors for users to see. We did this by adding 2D-like banners next to the edges where they are relevant. And if users don't want to see cofactors for simplistic reasons, they can filter out the ones they want to see or just turn them off entirely. And besides cofactors, we also made some adjustments to the network itself because it wasn't exactly polished, and we wanted to make the user experience better because we noticed that at some nodes and edges, they were not aligned. So this summer, we went through all the nodes and edges in Blender and realigned them, and we changed our curve edges to have a more trapezoidal shape. Now you might be asking why we did that. So this was, we planned on putting a sleeve on the edges, and these sleeves will have an arrow that shows the direction of reactions, because some reactions can go back and forth and others cannot. So with the sleeve, students or researchers will be able to know where these reactions are going. And you need information, not just a diagram of some circles and edges. So this is where the Wikibase comes in. So information from the Wikibase is split into Unity that's aligned with the nodes and edges. That gives you the information as in molecular formulas or just general descriptions. So we added oxidative phosphorylation to it, which was a major pathway that's important for biochemistry students, but was not in the Wikibase yet. Also, there were some placeholders that didn't have any information. So this summer, we made it our goal to fill in all the placeholders that were for nodes and edges that are in the network at the moment. So for future directions for our project, we're thinking of making a help tab and intro tutorial. Because of all these features, new users might have difficulties realizing what they can actually do in order to learn. We also wanted to add the bidirectional sleeve that I mentioned earlier because we didn't get to that this summer. Also adding compatibility for mouse and tablet use to make it more accessible to students, not just anyone that has a physical mouse, because most people don't carry that in their bag. We also wanted to add animations for oxidative phosphorylation. Like Reva mentioned, we did add animations, but oxidative phosphorylation is a bit more complex, so you would need to adjust that and make a custom one. And the final suggestion for this project is just expanding the network to have other pathways. One of them is amino acid degradation. And that's all we have to present today, and I'll hand the mic back to Marianne.
Great job, you guys. Thank you. So now I'd like to call on the JIS team and their PI, John Festinger, for their presentation. I'll turn over the mic to Leah and William.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leah. You might have seen me taking photos at the back, but I'm also a software developer for this team. I'm joined by William, the other software developer, and John. So now I'll pass it off to John to talk a little bit about the project.
Okay, the single most traumatic thing in first-year law school is the first-year criminal law moot that happens at the beginning of the second semester. And students, unless they've done debating in high school or in college, um, come to argue a case before a mock court of appeal that's made up of real lawyers and sometimes real judges. And they have to present their arguments in teams of two. And like all of us, the things that we don't know make us the most afraid. And you have an entire semester and a little bit to get afraid of this without any way to practice or prepare. And that's the inspiration for what we've done. I want to thank Nikos Harris and Barbara Wang of the law school, who are my indicted co-conspirators in all of this, and the students for doing an amazing job.
Thank you, John. I would also like to give a shout out to Jiho. She was our project lead, but she's unable to attend today, but she says her hellos from Korea. So yeah, as John mentioned, Moot Court is a project for students to practice their mooting in a low stakes environment. So JIS is a continued development of Moot Court, which was developed last year. And the idea is that JIS will be used not only for Moot Court practice, but also outside of it into the general law scene. So for this summer, we had 3 project objectives. Focus on finalizing Moot Court, improving the UI and UX, and also implementing an AI judge into the program itself. Here are the features that we were able to implement this summer. You can go through the list. Just a key note, we did have an audio bug at the beginning of the semester in which we were trying to fix, and we figured out that switching the audio implementation for another one using IBM Watson, we were able to fix it. So I'll pass it off to William to go more into depth about that.
Thank you, Leah. So it was very important for us to present a version of Moot Court that was functional for all people. So we had issues with a variety of devices and on different browsers that they weren't properly supported. To fix this, we found that switching the audio system to an AI generation one fit in line with our future goals of creating this judge you can have a conversation with. So by doing that switch, we kind of fixed 2 of these issues. So a lot of the changes that we made were also UI updates, small things like end page assessment, and also like a pause menu and a few bug fixes that had to do with going back and forth between pages. So all of these helped to creating a more polished user interface. And I will continue with showing. Some of the changes we made were toward the judge and the way that it behaved. So we used AI methods to take video of people's motions. In the future, we're planning to make this actual judge motions, but these were just volunteers in this case. And that translates to the judge motions that are like distracting motions such as drinking, and some of them are demonstrating and talking. And we also did a lot of changes toward the lighting. You can see the previous version and this one, with which Geo worked very hard on to create this nice ambient lighting. So this is a bit of a clip of the speech assessment page. This really helps you see where you were at with your time goals and how you were, if you were talking too fast or slowly at some points. You have your transcript here, and that corresponds to your words per minute. And that helps you see where you were speaking and how fast you were talking. Yes, so something that was, okay, here we go. So I wanted to give a demonstration of the current implementation we have of the judge. Here's a made-up conversation. We had a back and forth about the rights of dogs and if they should have human rights. So this is all just made up, but you can see how it behaves.
Hello, esteemed court. My name is William Watkins. I am here to discuss the legal rights of dogs.
Good day, Mr. Watkins. Thank you for addressing this interesting topic. You may proceed with your argument regarding the legal rights of dogs. Can you please clarify your main point on this matter, so that we may delve deeper into it?
Dogs have not been recognized by the law to have personhood. I would like to appeal this decision as there is new evidence regarding the intelligence of dogs.
Thank you for your statement, Mr. Watkins. Your appeal seems to challenge the legal status of dogs as non-persons due to evolving understandings of their intelligence. To better understand your argument, could you provide some specific examples or evidence of this increased awareness of canine intelligence, and how you believe it should impact their legal standing?
I would like to address that, however, that is all the time I have to present today.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins, for your presentation on the legal rights of dogs. Your argument has certainly raised some intriguing questions. I appreciate your participation in this moot court session, and I wish you success in your further endeavors. Farewell, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's the kind of interaction to help you feel more at ease with presenting. And you can see how it was doing some animations with talking, and we want to develop that further, basically to have facial expressions and to have more actions that basically ChatGPT, the AI, can trigger, so that they're more context specific. Yeah, and to further development that we'd like to do is with the assessment page, we'd like there to be more options there, basically more intel that you can use, as well as ChatGPT going over your entire argument and being able to give some pointers here and there that you can take or leave. Basically not to stress you out, but to give you a little bit of feedback. And another extension that we're doing, that if you go to our demo, you'll be able to try out the VR. And we have this asset of a courtroom. So for future development, we'd like to use metahumans. And essentially, this is to add to the realism so that you are more involved. This would be something that we develop less accessible because you'll need a headset, but then you will also be able to have this very in-depth experience. Yeah. Thank you for listening to our speech.
Great stuff, JIS. Thank you so much. And we have a couple more run-throughs before you get to go to the demonstration room and try it yourself. It's going to be great. So I'm just going to call up the team for Tapestry Tool. Thank you so much, Dr. Stephen Barnes, for coming, and Victoria and Sophia, if you want to come up and take the mic. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So this project, first of all, I'm Stephen Barnes. I'm in the Department of Psychology. I'm also director of the neuroscience program, undergraduate neuroscience program. This project was born of the idea that we have this tool. It's called Tapestry Tool. You may know of it, you may not know of it. It is basically a node-based interactive knowledge management tool. You'll see images of it shortly. What it is, up until now, up until this team of students actually came to this, it was dependent on a user actually creating content and specifying relationships between content. What the notion here was that, what could we get ChatGPT to actually use? What can we get ChatGPT to do in order to create content and also map the network between all the pieces of content? Sorry, I got my tremor going. So what happened was we looked at whether we can get ChatGPT to both pull content from the web and map the interconnections between that content. The notion here is that you would then have a web of content that a content creator, such as an educator, could then prune as necessary. So we wouldn't be relying on ChatGPT to actually create all the content and take it verbatim. Like any responsible use of generative AI, we would use it as a starting point, and then the teacher would actually prune it down. So the team here basically was tasked with this actually immense task of actually creating this tool, major revision to the tool to make it usable for anyone, even if they didn't have any content of their own.
Yeah, and before we get started into presenting our project, I'd like to introduce myself. So I'm Victoria. I'm the project lead and designer on this project.
My name's Sophia. I'm the developer on this project.
And awesome. So yeah, thank you, Dr. Barnes, for providing us with an overview on the project. So I would like to mention or rather reiterate the objective of the project. So it was to design and develop a machine learning integrated version that allows for a tapestry to be auto-generated based on a given topic, prompt, or PDF. So whichever method you choose, the tapestry would populate based on that. And also important to reiterate that the goal of automatic tapestry generation is not to produce a perfect tapestry, but one that produces an initial starting point of which users can edit and prune as they learn.
Okay, so to introduce Tapestry, Tapestry is a WordPress plugin that uses Vue, PHP, JavaScript, and HTML, CSS, and our machine learning prototype works on both local and remote sites. This is what our Tapestry looks like. So in terms of machine learning integration, we use the OpenAI API, specifically the GPT 3.5 Turbo model, to generate the text that populates each of the nodes in the tapestry. And so based on the user input, whether it be like a short phrase, for example, climate change, or if they would copy and paste a chunk of text from an article, or if they upload a PDF, this API will take that text and generate the text for the tapestry. And one of our most notable accomplishments includes reducing the number of API calls. So originally our tapestry required around 100 API calls to the OpenAI API in order to generate the tapestry, and we were able to reduce that to just about 1 call for every tapestry generated. And this is very important because it allows our site to be a lot more efficient. And finally, we use the Tapestry Tool API to generate the nodes and links for the tapestry.
And now for the key features of our prototype. So one of them is the prompt to tapestry generation feature. So you can submit a prompt input, again, as mentioned, a topic of your choice like climate change, or you can copy and paste some text from a recent news article, for example. And that is up to what GPT's limit of 2048 characters, or you can upload or drag and drop a PDF. So that can be, for example, like the first page of a research article with the abstract, or a first page of like your lecture notes.
So like Victoria mentioned, this drag and drop feature is particularly useful for students and instructors who want to break down lecture notes or really long, dense research articles. So when the user drags a PDF into the field on our site will take that PDF and extract all the text from the PDF and then send it to our tapestry generation function, which will then generate the tapestry.
And then to complement the organization of our tapestries, we added some node-specific organization features, so the strength of relevancy connections, which we'll dive into later, and then highlighting nodes and their connections. So as you can see here, this is an example of what would be an automatically generated tapestry. So in this case, the prompt with mathematics. And the tapestry is organized into 3 categories. So in the center, there is the prompt. So the parent node, as it's called, so mathematics, and then the light blue nodes are the child nodes. So for example, quantitative analysis, and then a grandchild node would be a more specific topic, for example, linear regression. So the content of the nodes gets more specific as you branch out. And yeah, so another example of an auto-generated tapestry, so this one with the prompt wildlife. So you can see from variety of life to protecting habitats, there is a light blue connection. So this is an example of a connection value of around 80 to 90. So this would be a middle connection. And from protecting habitats to conservation of species, I know there's a lot of lines, so, but the navy blue one would be a stronger connection, so that one would be a correlation value of around 90 to 100. So indicating that there is a stronger connection between these 2 topics. And yeah, so for the design of our prototype, we primarily used Figma, and to comprehensively evaluate its usability, we conducted 2 rounds of user research. So this encompassed usability tasks and UX research questionnaires. We leveraged esteemed metrics like the system usability scale and the use scale. So for our first round of user testing back in June, the goal was to get a sense of feedback on the initial prototype, which at the time only included a rudimentary version of our prompting feature. So that was the feature where you could type in text or copy in text and then get an automatic generated tapestry. And we also wanted to get a sense of ideas on how to represent node connections. So during this phase, we received a usability score below par coupled with an average use scale score.
So some things I worked on to improve our prototype after getting user feedback includes creating tooltips that make it easier to navigate the site. I also got rid of a lot of the thick borders and links to give our tapestry a more polished look. And I also implemented the feature of highlighting a node based on its connected nodes. So like in the image you saw earlier, when you select the user select a node, the links that it's connected to will become highlighted. And another feature that I added was the ability to add a root node automatically rather than manually.
And yeah, in the second round in August, our goal was to usability test on our latest iteration of our prototype. So now we had 2 features, the main features of our prototype, the PDF, upload a PDF feature and the prompting feature. So we wanted to obtain feedback on the proposed UI changes that we made. And also we were able to obtain some much better results. Our system usability score jumped up 12 percentage points to an A- rating, and our use score improved 1 full point as well.
Okay, so where is this project headed? For future development, we have 2 additional UI improvements that we would like to add. The first is to display the category of a node when the user hovers over it, so whether it's a parent or a child node. And the second one is for users to be able to see the number of connected links when they select on a node. For example, in the image that you just saw, when they select on the node, it was connected to 4 other nodes. On the bigger picture side towards future development, our first idea is for the automatic generation of nodes from a selected node. So for example, when the user selects any node on the tapestry, smaller child nodes will be able to branch out off of it, allowing them to have the freedom to expand their tapestry how they want to. Another idea that was brought up a lot during user interviews is for the automatic generation of multimodal content in our tapestry as well. So including things like videos and images inside of the nodes as well as text. And so that takes us to the end of our presentation. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. Dr. Patrick Benefather and Olivia Howe are here today as well for our last project presentation before we hit our demos. If I can turn over the mic to, all right, Liv.
Hello, everyone. So hi, yes, I'm Olivia Howe, and I was the project lead for the Shakespeare XR experiences, or the Shakespeare Extended Reality experiences, and I'll be taking you through just a quick presentation today on everything that we were able to accomplish this summer. However, before I get going, quick acknowledgement to my 2 volunteers, Jiho and Gabby, who are not here with me today, who did a huge part on the development of this project, and just want to give a quick acknowledgement to them. And before I begin my demo, I actually do also want to pass the mic to Dr. Patrick Penfather to just introduce the folio a little bit.
Thanks, Liv. Hi, everyone. Midsummer Night's Dream, Macbeth, King Richard II. There are so many different types of manifestations of Shakespeare, over 400 years, actually, over that time. The initiatives that you will see today, and that I'll speak to a little bit, are part of a collection of different research creations that are centered around UBC's recent acquisition, UBC Library's acquisition of the Shakespeare Folio. It's a 400-year-old book that Liv will dive into a little bit more. To set up Liv and your expectations of Shakespeare now, think about different types of media through which you've experienced Shakespeare in the past, and how connected were you to Shakespeare? How connected are you still to Shakespeare? We've seen manifestations across TV and film. We've seen different reinventions for different types of stages, even for the live stage. How many of you have seen Romeo Must Die with Jet Li, DMX, and Aaliyah? Yeah. Okay. How many of you are knowledgeable about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead? Another fantastic movie, a spin-off based on characters from Shakespeare. So what we're doing now is we're taking aspects of Shakespeare, looking at the first folio and seeing what other stages that Shakespeare can live.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. Isn't he so well spoken? Anyway, on to the actual part, the things that you're here for. So to kind of highlight a few things about what Patrick just talked about, a little bit about how we actually got here. So yes, recently UBC Library did acquire this folio, this collection of Shakespeare's plays. However, it has a long history before it even got here. About 400 years ago, when it was published in 1623, about 7 years before Shakespeare died, this book was given to friends, writers, playwrights, actors, who all took their time reading these plays and actually transcribing annotations, leaving coffee stains, seeing little things on what actually made the Shakespeare plays stand out to them. And throughout that 400 years, as this book has preserved those plays, it's also brought along that annotational history. Every owner that's owned the book up to this point has also went along and wrote in it, left some coffee stains, censored other writers who may have had worse opinions, to both give our perspectives on what Shakespeare is throughout history, as well as the plays as they were when they were written. So moving into the folio, we kind of came into this with a couple of goals. First was to utilize developing technologies to inspire exploration for people who are new to Shakespeare, who maybe have lost that connection to Shakespeare over time. And the second was to actually start sparking new academic discourse surrounding both the folio, the plays, as well as this hidden history that the folio has been able to hold onto over that 400-year journey. So we've dabbled a little bit in this up till now. There was a project recently called Shakespeare in the Metaverse, which was a VR game delving you into the worlds of Shakespeare plays. However, moving into the summer, we had a couple of different goals in mind. The first of which was to develop some sort of access point for students, for teachers, for visitors to actually see the folio itself. The book is old. It's starting to show that 400 years of time that it's spent on this earth. So actually making sure people can interact with it in a safe way was paramount. The second was to start actually sparking that discourse, and we had to pick what we wanted to do with that. So first, touch on the slightly easier in concept but difficult to execute, the touch table. So this was our universal kind of central hub access point where we actually began to show off the folio itself. It was our hub for preserving the historic text using super hyper-realistic photographs. Basically taken using photometric scanning technology, which is a hyper-detailed type of picture that hopefully captures every single indent, the shadows, the annotations, because the pictures aren't just of the text, it's of also that history of how this book has changed over that 400-year time. Along with that, we then developed a Unity application and threw it onto a gigantic iPad cemented to a table, or a touch table, which is able to be played with later today in our demo session. Now, the second part of this process was the AI and metahumans section of it, meaning we wanted to reignite some discourse using a few of these tools. And there's a lot of different ways we could go with it, but we wanted to start with what we felt was the most important, which was actually giving a voice to the historical figures captured within Shakespeare's works. When we're thinking about the Shakespeare plays, we think about Macbeth, Portia, Cleopatra, these people who were not only within the plays themselves, but do actually have some history extended past. And over the time, Shakespeare had his own perceptions of those characters, and those characters have been changed over time to be characters rather than figures. So we figured it was time for them to actually voice their own opinions on how they've been perceived throughout history. So we used AI to recreate their thoughts, their opinions, and we used metahumans, which are basically super realistic 3D human models. Kind of think about the metaverse, if you would, but your own person kind of in it, as well as we used motion capture, which is basically a bunch of cameras capturing human motion in the real world and digitizing it onto these metahumans to make a very realistic person that you can actually interact with. That was kind of the vessel, and the AI created the thoughts to recreate the human being and let them talk about themselves within these books, within the plays themselves. Now, there's a lot that I just covered there, so if you have any questions about all of the tech that I just mentioned, please come speak to me at the demo. I can only fit so much into a tiny presentation. However, I do, before I let you all go, want to talk about the next steps of where we actually want to take this thing moving forward. And I'll start with the metahumans because they're slightly easier, technically. The first thing we want to do is make sure that we work out all the bugs. The thing with working with virtual models, as Pixar, Disney can tell you, there is an uncanny valley that you have to balance, especially when you're going for realism. So making sure that those metahumans are operating and looking like people is very important to us because we're trying to capture actual historical figures. Now, the next step from that would be to actually put them in a place where you can talk to them, because right now they're locked within a computer. So creating virtual theaters or putting them into the touch table are two kind of options that we're exploring as to how you can interact with these historical figures within the folio itself. And now my favorite, the touch table expansions. Obviously, once again, there are some bugs to work out. Some of these hyper-realistic photos that I talked about aren't actually transferring super well. So figuring out where in the software those bugs are actually placed is important, first off, to preserving the history, because that's paramount to us as we explore further explorations of the folio. But moving past that, we want to talk about actually what brought us all to Shakespeare. My own personal recollections of Shakespeare are what I learned in high school, and that was basically Romeo and Juliet, and thus I've forgotten most of it. So I wanted to make sure that I created an opportunity for new people to experience and learn from the folio itself as it's presented. Meaning we're looking at AI integration, both for language translation, in case English isn't your second language or Shakespearean isn't your first language, just to be safe, as well as study assistance, teaching you actually what these plays are trying to say, what emotions they're trying to capture, maybe even having some performances built into the touch table itself. And then moving forward from that, we're not just going to stop at the folio, because this has only inspired us to look at other historical texts who have also made that journey through history. There are many books who have come the 400 years, and they all should be looking for a place to be preserved. So looking to extend that library, this digital historical library, is also paramount to us. But with that, I'm actually going to leave you be. Please come find me in the demo section. And thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, students. That's going to conclude all of our presentations, and we do have a further part of the program today. I just want to congratulate all of our really capable students and our very thoughtful PIs who bring these projects to us. As a unit of UBC's IT department, the Emerging Media Lab is a unique vehicle to support innovation and advance student experience, practical learning, and a collaborative culture at the university. We appreciate the work of everyone here to support us to do that. And I really appreciate people taking the time to come out today. Particularly, I look forward to passing the mic over to Jennifer Burns, who is our Associate Vice President, Information Technology and Chief Information Officer.
Thank you. And I know I'm standing between everyone and the reception, so I'll keep it brief, but I really want to thank the students for coming forward today and sharing the projects. You guys did a great job. I'm just so impressed by what you've done here. It's really wow, and it makes me think about how I can go away and figure out ways to publicize what's being done here and find ways to support it. I also want to thank Christina because it's really a collaboration, and everything that the EML does is based on collaboration, because it is about the technology, but fundamentally it's about people. It's about the PIs that bring forward the ideas. It's about the students that come together to work on those ideas. It's the EML staff that really coordinate that and support and mentor the students. And so it's really impressive what it has come together to deliver here. I also want to acknowledge the Cuccio Award for collaboration. So riffing on that collaboration piece, Cuccio is the Canadian University Council for CIOs. So it's all the universities across Canada. They come together once a year to celebrate higher ed IT and to showcase projects and activities that the higher ed community has put together. And they have an awards ceremony for various different types of projects and work that's happened. And this year, I really want to recognize the collaborative course development project and Patrick Pennefather and Saeed Dainakar for this award. Well done. It's an award for everybody involved in that project and everybody at the EML to have that recognized. So congratulations, and thank you for showcasing what you've done today. It's absolutely terrific work. And come to the reception.
Super, thank you so much. For those who are interested in or brand new here today, thanks for coming out. If you want to talk to anybody on staff about getting involved with EML, we are here for that today. But I did just want to also clarify that we are going to pick up all the action. And you can just go out the doors here, turn right, and we'll be switching over to the Dodson room. I appreciate the time of all of our special guests today. Thank you so much. And I'd really like to acknowledge the work of An Lee and Nicole Wang, my lab coordinators, and the various other people who helped us put this event together today. At the back, Edwin and Andrew, UBC Studios team, and all the rest of it. And that's all I had for us today before we gather over in the Dodson. Thank you.